Thank you. Yes, so as Alessandra said, I'm the program manager for the Psychiatry Consortium. So I'm just going to give a quick sort of whistle-stop tour of what we do and why we're here, really, and what's happened in the psychiatric drug discovery area that's brought us to launch late last year. So, as I'm sure most of you are aware, the psychiatric drug discovery field is facing real challenges at the moment. The lack of novel drug targets combined with the challenge of validating them preclinically, and then added to the high failure rate in clinical trials, kind of led to a real decrease in interest and investment in the drug discovery and development in the last 10 years. And there's not really been any new effective types of treatments for over 30 years. I think that came across really powerfully in Emily's talk earlier. So the Psychiatry Consortium was established to make the most of the opportunities that the current times have provided us with. And we're really blessed at the moment that we've got an increased understanding of the biology. And there's also emerging genetic data that's going to inform new efforts in drug discovery. And as we've heard from John, there's still an interest from pharma, which means there's opportunities there for reinvestment. And as Jerome's just demonstrated, there are world-leading academic initiatives such as the PGC that are already generating new targets, which we can take advantage of and take them through that translational path to drug discovery. So the Psychiatric Consortium aims to bring these two worlds together to enable the validation of academic-led projects and target proposals to industry standards. It's a truly collaborative effort, though. We're quite different from normal funding bodies, and we do offer funding to help support these initiatives, but it's a really collaborative effort, and we support academic researchers through combining that industry know-how and commercial expertise as well. So we do just much more than just offering funding. So who are we? Well, we are a strategic collaboration of 2 leading medical research charities and 6 pharmaceutical companies. We're managed by Medicines Discovery Catapult, the managing partner, and we're supported by the Wellcome Trust, who fund our academic engagement and outreach events. The consortium acts as a syndicate, so as has been alluded to before, the drug discovery process is high risk, and especially that early drug discovery costs a lot of money. So this acts as a syndicate whereby the partners share that risk and that financial risk as well. And we're also fortunate to be supported by our drug discovery partners, Evotec and Charles River, who are our partner CROs, and they provide that expertise in the drug development phase. They support the development and the execution of projects. So we aim to have around 2 or 3 funding calls a year, where there's opportunities for academics to submit proposals for funding. And very briefly, we request very high-level proposals from the academic community. These are just 2 to 3 pages long, and we just ask for a sense of what is the target that you're proposing? Is it novel? And what sort of evidence is there already to show that that has got some sort of link to the human condition? We provide an initial scope assessment. So you can see on the screen here that we have a brief indication of the kind of things that we're looking for in terms of disease area and the type of project. And what we really want to see here is sort of early drug discovery projects with a focus on new biological targets that are relevant to disease that we are able to then progress through the pipeline. There's a variety of diseases that we're interested in, mainly psychiatric conditions, but also those psychiatric symptoms that are associated with dementia. So all of those ones that Emily was mentioning earlier that are so difficult to deal with for patients and their families. So once we've had that initial scope assessment, if a project is in
Alessandra, you are muted. We can't hear you anymore.
Yes, hi. I think Laura was cut off from our presentation.
Yeah, wait, let's see. She's not on the call anymore.
Yeah. So maybe I can just continue to cover the process, if that's okay.
Can you speak up a little bit? It's also very difficult to understand. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. So I think Laura was just describing our project development process. So once we've identified applications that are in scope, those applications will be assessed for an expression of interest from the members of the Psychiatry Consortium. And what that means is that through that, we will identify projects that we are interested in taking forward to the development stage. And what that development stage involves is working with the PI, the CRO supporting that project, and the funding partners of the Psychiatry Consortium to really develop the proposal in a cohesive drug discovery program, including relevant work packages and milestones and so on. And that's a very iterative process, which means that there's plenty of opportunity for interaction between the academic leads and our members of the Psychiatry Consortium. At the end of that process, once the project is approved for funding, I see that Laura is back now. So Laura, I was covering while you were trying to come back online.
Sorry about that.
Process. If you want to share your screen, maybe.
There we go. Can you see that now?
Yes. So we're just speaking to the project development stage. Maybe you can, and now we get to that funding decision, I suppose, once we have developed a project plan that the funding partners have approved. So perhaps you can finish off the cycle.
Yes, sorry about that, not a good time for your computer to break. But yeah, as Alessandra was saying, so that's a really collaborative process where we all kind of pitch in and make the project as robust as it possibly can be in order to really thoroughly validate those targets that have been proposed. And once the partners have decided that that project plan is satisfactory and that that's going to be a really great project, then we go ahead and get a funding confirmation and decision, and the project is then launched and it's then prosecuted, and each area of the project is then delivered by the people that have the most expertise in that area. So this isn't a case whereby we take the projects from the academics and then we deliver them as a consortium ourselves. This is very much a collaborative process. So the science will be led by the PI, and then we sort of input our expertise and share the work packages or the different areas of the project with the people that have the most expertise to deliver them, so that the science is executed as well as it possibly can be. Let's see if this allows me to carry on. There we go. So at the moment we have just launched our call for applications, our second call. So this opened now, it opened just on Monday, and the deadline for applications will be the 12th of June. So you've got a couple of weeks to submit your projects if you are interested in doing so. And if it's a little bit too early for you, but this is something that you're thinking of doing, then we'll be open again for further submissions in October. And throughout 2021, we'll also be opening a couple of times then as well. So for further information, really the best place to visit is our new website. So we have a brand new website full of resources to support researchers that are looking to apply to these funding schemes, or that just want to know more about what we do and our partners. So the website's up on the screen now. I would suggest that you visit that for all information about how the projects are run, how we review those processes in detail, and exactly the kind of projects that we're looking for. We have a resources tab where all of those resources are located. And you can also see our previous webinars where we have gone through in detail the application process. And if you are interested in supplying a potential application for us to review, then on Monday next week, we'll be hosting a webinar where we're going to really go into a bit more detail about exactly the type of projects that we're looking for. And we'll have a look at our learnings from our first call. So this call that's open at the moment is our second call, and obviously we've learned an awful lot from the types of projects that are successful and the types of things that are likely to succeed, and what the partners really want to see in a project. So we can pass on that knowledge to you in this webinar on Monday. There's loads of frequently asked questions and hints and tips on the website, but if you have any questions that you want to speak to myself or any of the team, then feel free to contact us, and you can do that through the website as well. And I'd be happy to discuss any applications with you. So if you have any preliminary ideas and after having a look at all the resources, you still have questions about whether it would be in scope or whether it would be something that we would be interested in pursuing, then please feel free to just get in touch and I'll be happy to have a chat with you over the phone. And then finally, I think it's just to say that this is just one of our many attempts to engage the academic community, and obviously it's been a little bit difficult to do this online rather than in person, which we would have loved to have done, but I think it's really worked out for the best because we've been able to get so many people from all over the world to join us today. And this is something that we'll be looking forward to doing in future as well. So please do check our website and sign up to the mailing list if you'd like to be notified directly of any future events that we're doing, because this is something that we really want to continue to do, especially in these times when we're all isolated from each other and working remotely. We're still working to bring together the academic and the industrial communities for psychiatric research. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So I think we can now start the Q&A session. Perhaps I can start with a couple of questions to Emily to begin with.
Hiya.
Hi, Emily. Welcome back.
Hi.
So the first question is, what guidance and advice had the most benefit to you and your family from clinicians that you received?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I would say I wasn't that impressed with the advice we got from clinicians and stuff. You know, we got a misdiagnosis at the start, and then I'd say the quetiapine wasn't particularly working for us, but they just put the dose up and up and up, and I'm not really convinced it really worked. I'd just say it's really, I'd actually say it was a really, really hard thing to deal with. And I'm sure lots of people have been through the same kind of cycles with professionals and stuff. I think the one thing, the one advice we did get, which we didn't really take, was to give mum more of the lorazepam, which is like, it's like a type of Valium. It kind of knocks you out. We were really, we felt like we were kind of drugging mum and we didn't want to do that. But actually looking back, I think we probably should have done that more, because I think actually for her to have felt more at peace, I think we should have been less skeptical of it being a drug, and I think the mental health nurse kept telling us to use it more, and we didn't. So,
okay, thank you, Emily.
So I think
people have been flagging maybe that I'm too quiet. I'm wondering whether there's an issue with my microphone. So I'm just wondering whether I should hand over to Jerome to continue the Q&A, just to make sure that.
Yeah, I can do that. It's all right. All right. So thank you. So I think
the next question would also be for Emily. It's like from an anonymous attendee. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure your mother met with many. Sorry, that's the one we had. And then the next one is, how different is the psychosis in Alzheimer's compared to psychosis in bipolar or schizophrenia? But I guess probably.
I wouldn't know, I'm afraid.
That's probably more like a clinician question.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone does know.
Okay. John, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So there's one question for you, which is, how is Johnson & Johnson using genetics to support personalization of existing drug targets, for example, to improve the efficacy of SSRIs?
I'm afraid I'm not really qualified to answer that question, because we don't have SSRI programs at the moment in J&J, so I'm not really aware of any work that we're doing. But so yeah, not my area of expertise, I'm afraid.
Okay, so I think the next I'll do this, Chris. Okay, so next question is from Jen Pan. So Jen, I'm going to allow you to talk. Maybe you can ask your second question, I think. Oops. Jen ran away. Okay. No, I don't think so. Where did Jen go?
Can you hear me?
Ah, yes. Great. Excellent.
Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to ask John about just the overall feeling about the genetic risk and the progression of the disease. But typically, I mean, when you think about the risk, the genetic basis for disease, it is to promote the initiation of the disorder, correct? And then, but it doesn't quite really address, or maybe I'm wrong, the progression of the disease. So how does the industry balance picking a target? Because you're mostly focusing on if there is a strong genetic basis, which is great. But for you know, even Alzheimer's, the later on stage and then the beginning of the stage, disease is very different. How do you balance the picking?
Yeah, so if I understand you, you're talking about how can we use genetics to maybe find medicines that slow disease progression once you have the disease, or maybe can treat symptoms associated with the disease, as opposed to medicines that are for stopping disease earlier on. And I think that's a great question, and there's a lot of unmet medical need. I think you heard from Emily earlier on, you know, that her mother experienced many symptoms which they were desperately searching for medicines to provide treatment for. And genetics is starting to do that. And so there have been hints. Jerome's much better placed to answer this than I, and Jerome, please jump in. But there is genetics that indicates risk for certain psychiatric symptoms associated with dementia. And there was recently a medicine which was successful in preventing psychosis in Parkinson's disease, but also in a number of other dementias. And that actually does align with the genetics somewhat. So I think this is a really, really important question. It's a harder question to answer at the moment because the size of the populations that you have available to identify genetic associations are smaller. You know, people who currently have active disease, as opposed to the lifetime risk of everybody in the population of developing disease. The other way to think about this is to ask the question from big data from electronic health records. Are there medicines that are taken in the population for other indications that influence either the risk or the rate of progression of dementia, for example, or the risk of major depressive disorder or psychosis? And I think that's another area of real interest that's often combined with genetics. Really, I think is going to be a really interesting area to go to.
Thank you.
Jerome, there's one more question for you. So considering that the psychiatric genomic schizophrenia patients are often sampled from clinics, are we oversampling for people with genotypes that respond to psychiatric medications and therefore find enrichment? Are the correlations between psychiatric disorder treatment responsive and treatment resistant?
So basically, James Walters in Cardiff is doing some amazing work on this. He has assembled something like 17,000 or 18,000 cases from clozapine testing. So clozapine is a drug given to treatment-resistant schizophrenia cases it causes rare side effects that are serious. So blood monitoring has to take place every month. So he put in place ethics to recruit or rather retain some of the blood samples that are taken from schizophrenia patients. So in that way, assembled an unbiased cohort of treatment-resistant schizophrenia. So he's done GWAS work comparing treatment-resistant schizophrenia with, as it were, treatment-responsive schizophrenia. And as yet, he hasn't found, as far as I know anyway, huge differences. And it's probably worth noting that in the big GWAS, that's a really large contributor, the big schizophrenia GWAS. So I think, you know, it's balanced between cases that might be more responsive and cases that might be more treatment resistant at the current point in time. I suspect, I think, you know, there are other factors that underlie treatment resistance. And the other thing that's coming through from the PGC depression, antidepressant response work, it's work by Ollie Payne and Catherine Lewis and Andrew McIntosh, is the genetics of antidepressant response is actually fairly strong, but actually is quite orthogonal to the depression genetics. So it's not strongly genetically correlated with the genetics of depression itself. And it could be that the genetics of response turn out to be quite different to the genetics of disorder.
Thank you, Jerome. And then there's one question for Laura, which I think is very important. Laura, could you tell us which kind of proposal were successful in the first round of the Psychiatry Consortium funding? For example, which disease, which stage of target discovery?
Yeah, so it's quite difficult to say really, because it's not, each project is judged on its individual scientific merits. So there's no particular disease area that we're specifically looking for. We're quite disease agnostic when we review the proposals, as long as they are within remit. We are particularly interested in those that are very early stage. So when they've got a little bit of clinical data that supports them. So it needs to be a little bit more than just animal data or animal model linkage. So something that's got a little bit of evidence to link it to the human condition is quite important. But it's very difficult to say specifically if there's any one type of project that we're looking for, because we're really open to progressing a variety. It's something that we're going to go really in detail in the webinar on Monday. So if anybody is interested, then I'd recommend registering for that.
And there's one more question for Emily and one for John. So I would like to take both of them. So Emily, there's a question for you. At first, the attendees thanking you for sharing the story. And they say they found it quite familiar to the story in her own or his own family. And they said they found that music could have a positive effect on the mental well-being. Did you find that music helped for your mom?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd say music is, I believe it's stored in a different part of the brain, and you can really tell that. So like when you play like old songs like the Beatles and stuff from mum's childhood, that could really calm her down. It's just unfortunate you can't just keep it up for 24 hours a day. Otherwise that would just be great. But yeah, music was very powerful.
Thank you for sharing this. And then the last question is for you, John, and it's from Enrico Dominici. And so what is the consensus at Johnson & Johnson about progressing targets based on genetic evidence restricted to common variations, GWAS?
So I certainly GWAS is an important component of the reason to believe in a target. And so, if we have a GWAS signal and then have some understanding of the pathway biology associated with the gene that's implicated in the GWAS, then certainly we would be very interested in that. As I mentioned, the challenge is the therapeutic hypothesis around the SNP or the SNPs, and also being how clear the SNP is associated with the nearest gene, or the gene that's been implicated. But I think that certainly is something of considerable interest to us, yes.
Thank you.